All righty, here we go. Make sure everybody's unmuted. There we go. Okay, we are all unmuted. Whoop, trying to get you back. I'm trying to ask you what the problem is here. Hold on. Okay, all right, here we are. Welcome to the Weehaw.com Weekly Roundtable. I'm John Lyons here with Ronnie Newton, the managing editor of Weehaw.com. Tonight we have several well-known people joining us. Well-known around the Sheehan, the founder and admin of the Neighbors and Friends of West Hartford page on Facebook, with incredibly nearly 20,000 members, which represents probably close to 40%, no, about 30% of the town population. Rocky and Sandy Holland are the founders and admins of the West Hartford Political Forum. Tonight we're going to be discussing the challenges of running with large pages, how they originated, and what the future holds. We're also going to share some of the interesting stories and events that have happened on those pages over the years, as well as delve into some of the challenges each of these admins face today. Patti, Sandy, and Rocky, who will be here in just a moment. We're waiting for you to arrive from your commute home. It is snowy out. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. So, does somebody have a vacuum cleaner running in the background? I actually hear some
it's
noise.
Coming from Patty's.
I think it's my laptop. It's just the motor running.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't figure out how to get it to stop.
Okay. All right. Well, we will power through because we are live. We're live on Channel 5. So we are broadcasting at this point. So, all right. So, Patti, let's start with you. You probably had it, 10 years now? When did you start the group?
It's been about 8 years. It started in June of 2012.
Okay. What hit you? What motivated you to start the group? What are the origins of the group?
It was actually because my father's house had been broken into, and I posted it on my personal page and realized that within about a 5-block radius, there were similar stories within the same, 2 to 3 days. And there was no way to know that. There wasn't any way to instantly kind of get that information. So it started, originally it really was meant to be like just for the neighborhood, and it just kind of exploded. It took about a year for it to catch on, and then it just snowballed from there.
So after a year, how many members would you say you have before it kind of hit that acceleration, that ramp up? How long would you say, how many members would you say you had after a year?
Up until about a year and a half, it was probably in the thousands, maybe,
Okay.
All of my friends and a few people who had added their friends. And I'm not entirely sure what that tipping point was, but all of a sudden it just went. And it kind of, more news was able to be found online, so we could add those kind of things, and it went from there.
I remember meeting with you when, we started Weehaw.com in July of 2014, and I remember meeting with you then to kind of talk about how we could work together. And it seemed like it was still pretty new, but
at that point,
I kept watching it grow and grow and grow after that.
Yeah, I'm not sure entirely when it kind of hit that, all of a sudden it hit that 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and within a short period of time, we were hitting 10,000, and now we're, like John said, just under 20,000.
It's pretty remarkable to see the growth. It's been a lot of fun. I started paying attention to the numbers when I was interviewed, just as you were, for the Weehaw.com podcast, probably now a year and a half ago. And that's when I started paying attention to the numbers, because I think there's so much crossover with certainly with what Ronnie does and what you do. And so there's a ton of crossover. So what point, because the page has changed, you've had to, evolve and revise the rules for the page over the years. Early on, what were some of your biggest challenges? I know the challenges have changed, but do you remember back in the early days, what were the challenges?
Early on, there wasn't a whole bunch happening. So it was just kind of that little bit of, did you hear that, there was a robbery, or little things. There wasn't a lot of information being, produced out of it. So it didn't require a whole lot. Once we started turning over a lot of information is when we kind of had to start thinking, all right, maybe there needs to be, a guideline, a motto per se of how this page is going to work. It's not just going to be a free for all. And along those same times is when like the recycle pages started going and things like that. So we could easily kind of splinter off into those types of groups just to make it easier to find information.
So early on, if I
So
want to
at
tell
first,
something,
was it?
oh, sorry. Yep.
Okay. No, I was
We're
just
having
gonna
a
ask
little
if it was a
sound
closed
issue. That's
group
why
from
we're
the
stepping on
beginning.
each other. I apologize. So
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Was it always a closed group, or was it completely
At
open to the
one
public?
point at the very beginning, it was what Facebook called public at the time.
Mhm.
And some of the information that was being shared was not that it was questionable to share, but people were saying, I'm going away for the weekend. I'm looking for a dog sitter. Did we really want the entire Facebook community to know that? So we did make it, I think the term at the time was closed. Now I think it's private. It's not secret. It's searchable. People can find it. But that way you can't see anything being posted unless you're a part of it. Which obviously we still don't want people to put all of their personal information out there, but at least it's confined to the people that are within the group.
And it looks like we've got another guest.
My other half
has arrived. Rocky, how are you?
I'm doing well, John. Thanks for having me. Sorry I'm late. Travel was really rough from the Boston region.
So you were up in Boston. Okay. So yeah, with all the snow, I'm not, although we didn't get nearly as much, but as expected, but it's definitely enough to make the roads a little hazardous. So anyway, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. We're kind of grilling Patti on the origins of Neighbors and Friends right now. So what are some of the big challenges you run into? I mean, when the town made the decision to close the schools last March 11th or 12th, whatever day it was, you turned on admin approval for everything, which must be, how many admins are there?
We're a group of 4.
Okay.
The team, Sandy being one of them.
Yep.
I managed to convince her, and then we have 2 other women, Carol and Kara, that help out. We all kind of do our thing, whether it's approving posts or approving member requests and things like that. But we did go to post approval just to kind of cut down on the double posting, misinformation, which some of the posts we did catch at the very beginning. There was a lot of things flying out there that weren't correct. So we were trying to make it a little bit easier to navigate because the entire world was just upside down at that point, and we didn't want to add to the chaos and confusion.
Has it been harder or easier? Because I know, you probably log into your computer, you probably have 15, 20, or even 30 requests or pending. Harder this way or easier?
Or probably more than that, right?
It depends on the day and the time, et cetera. And, Sandy can speak to this too, but I don't think it's been hard. I think there are days sometimes you can tell when there's a lot going on in the town, whether it's school related or, town related with vaccines happening or school closing or stuff like that. We tend to get a lot, but it hasn't been horrible. It is sometimes still time consuming and we don't get to them right away. I'm not up at 3 a.m. So if somebody's trying to put something at that time, it's not going to get approved until one of us gets up in the morning. But other than that, I don't think we've had too many issues with post approval. It hasn't been as hard as we thought it might be.
So Sandy, I guess you have you been an or a moderator or whatever your role is, that role since day one, or did you take on the role after it was up and running?
No, I think it got to a point where Patti was doing it all by herself, and it was just,
Yikes.
It was too much for one person. Once it got to be, over 10,000 people, 14,000, it was, we were in the double digit 10,000 something when she decided to add people. And I think she put something out there asking if anybody would want to do it or if anyone had ideas. And this one threw my name in the hat.
Nice. Good job, Rocky.
So
Way to avoid accountability.
Yeah.
Well
She did
done.
not divorce me yet. Still here.
So talk about. I don't know I don't know whether I should go negative, positive, negative, but the way I've written the questions, Ronnie's looking at the list here too. I've got. Let's talk about what is your single worst or most. And we don't want to out here, guys, but there are some really funny moments, but I know there's some really, really stressful moments. And you know what? I'll start with one, Patti, where I called you on the phone. I thought it was so egregious where somebody had posted a feed to like a multi-level marketing presentation that was going on. I don't know if you remember this. This was years and years ago. And I was just outraged that somebody, you put up Neighbors and Friends and there's just this live feed coming, selling Tupperware or whatever it was. And, but Patti, what is, kind of without outing anybody, what's your kind of your single, what stands out that, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening moment?
There's been a few, and Sandy can attest to some of them that nobody has ever seen because of post-approval. It's a good thing post-approval was on. And the one you're talking about in those early days when we didn't have the ability to have post-approval, we didn't always catch some of those. And, there are a few other ones that, these live videos people were sharing. And I'm like, that's not legal, first of all. And but until I saw it, I didn't know it was out there, and right now the biggest thing is probably just being neighborly, and trying to keep what we call keyboard warriors to a minimum. We all get frustrated. And right now I know, we're a year into this and it's tough on everybody, but it's not fair to take it out on a neighbor who may have an innocent comment that you just read the wrong way. It's hard to infer sarcasm or whatever. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge of all of it, and on any online platform is just being kind to each other and taking that step back and saying, maybe that's not coming out the way I want it to sound.
So are there any guidelines that you have been able to look at, the way these similar, other towns have pages that are similar? Do you follow some of those and maybe use some of their guidelines as your own?
I do follow a bunch of the neighboring towns, more just to kind of see, how it's running. And I'm realizing that our page is not any different than any other group with the little, how it happens and, how people talk to each other and stuff like that. But generally, I think we only have about 6 guidelines, and it's no politics, which is what we have Sandy and Rocky for. No buying and selling and in search of, because there are numerous pages that do that, just to kind of keep that off. Because I don't know if a lot of people realize, but in the way Facebook has it set up in groups, whatever is the newest comment or post is bumped to the top. So if you post something and it doesn't get a comment, it could be 40 posts down and it's not going to get viewed. So if we can keep some of the political and the buying and selling off of it, it helps cut down on that. And we try, I think it's be neighborly, keep it as specific as we can to West Hartford. We do allow business posts, but we ask that it's only, once every 3 months, because once again, there are other ways to find businesses. So it's just, we have general ones. There are some towns that get really specific, and I wasn't not quite open to doing that. I think for the most part, except for once in a while, we seem to run pretty smoothly.
It does seem to run smoothly. I mean, Ronnie obviously is a very heavy contributor, probably multiple times per day. It's really become a fantastic source for clicks. Ronnie, correct me if I'm wrong. I've tried to jump in with the weather. It seems to have, so far so good. It's worked out in despite the fact that this one, I blew the snow totals on this one a little bit, but I enjoy it because it's a good way for the community to kind of provide information and, school cancellations, things like that, delays, that sort of thing. But Patti, I also think about, there's been some really, really funny moments on that page. And one that stands out to me is, which is an all-time classic, is the stroller debate for the ice cream shop. Milk crab, the
milk crab, yeah.
stroller debate. And it turned into and it's really interesting when, we live in a community that's very diverse and also very involved. There's a lot of opinions. And the milk craft one jumps out at me as really funny, but also a lot of people had really strong opinions on it. Patti, what are some of the funnier ones that recall over the years?
That's a hard one because I think, it's kind of different in how it takes off and how things kind of go. And, there's always these little, sometimes running jokes through various threads that could be 2 or 3 years old that come back. But I think sometimes people are also looking, they're looking for the town information, but it is nice to have that connection of, an inside joke or, something that only West Hartford kind of gets.
Like Crookshanks. Crookshanks was a big inside.
Oh yeah, poor
Sadly, he's gone.
But that was a post that was like somebody saying, "Hey, can you keep an eye on your cat?" And then the next thing you know, everyone knows who Crookshanks is.
Yeah. So I think that it's enough throughout that people are getting the important stuff, but also connecting on kind of that personal level.
I learned early on that humor is tough. I made a joke on that page, probably my head handed to me for it. There was a house on North Steel that was really just a foundation, and I knew the backstory, and I probably should have shared it. But basically, it was owned by somebody who worked for the government and lived in a different part of town, but he was often seen over there. So I think people thought he lived there. And when John Lepore had his construction company come in and tear it down, I made a joke using Ford's quote from when Nixon resigned. I said, "Our long townwide nightmare is over." And people thought there were residents there that were being displaced. And I learned then, okay, very little room for humor on this page because it can be taken the wrong way. So I've got my own bad memory where I stepped in it, but it's been a great resource, and I enjoy it, Patti. And this is why we wanted to have you on. Ronnie, if you got more for Patti, I'm going to pivot over otherwise to Rocky and Sandy.
I actually do want to ask one question. I've never asked you this before, Patti, but so kind of in response to some of the things that have been maybe humorous and maybe have kind of gone off on a tangent, another page was formed called We Hot Enemies and Distant Cousins, which is kind of a spoof on Neighbors and Friends. Do you follow that at all? And how did you feel when that page formed?
So when it first kind of came out, it wasn't pleasant. Some of the screenshots and things like that were, making fun of without blocking out names and things like that. And that I have a hard time with. But it's evolved, I think, from beyond just West Hartford. They pull other things in and out. And some of it is funny. And you know what? We all need that escape from reality of making fun of ourselves. And it's a different type of a page. It's not, it's a satire. It's.
Oh yeah, no, and it's totally evolved so that it was satire of Neighbors and Friends at first. Now it's not. It's
lots of memes and things like that.
Yeah.
I see them occasionally as they come through because I believe it's a public, so it does come through every once in a while. So, but once they stopped with kind of making fun of specific people, it was okay. Mm-hmm. I had a hard time when it was calling out specific people because I don't think that's fair.
So I got called out on it once.
Yeah, I did too. That's how I found out about it.
I think we all have.
So it.
One time I self-reported myself though because I knew it was going to end up there, and I thought, I'm just going to put this out because I can't remember what it was, but some of the stories that I post or things that I've ended up doing, like I'm always willing to, if I make a mistake, my husband's probably listening. He'll say that's not true, but I do admit when and I can definitely be wrong. I mean, I try not to be wrong in my writing, but if I make a mistake, I will admit it. I'll fess up to it and fix it to the best of my ability.
This is a certain age joke, but you have to be a certain age to get it. But Ronnie, usually when you're wrong about something, you say you're, you know, like you take a page out of Fonzie's book and and I'm kidding. I'm just picking on you.
I think that's a man thing, John.
That's what he does.
Yeah, I know.
I was right.
Yeah, see, Rocky, you missed it. Ronnie is going to lecture me after this broadcast. I have to go in.
No. You're being very sensitive. I'm not going to lecture.
So
Sandy's already written down 15 things that I'm going to get lectured on as soon as we're done. That's how we work.
That's the fun of the joy of marriage. So anyway, all right. So Rocky and Sandy. So there was a little bit of politics on Neighbors and Friends many years ago. It moved off, and then you guys started the West Hartford political. Anyone listening should join. If you're not a member of Neighbors and Friends, although I think you're probably not watching this broadcast if you're not Neighbors and Friends, definitely join. And definitely join Political Forum. There is a lot of lively debate. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the debate that's gone on recently, because something gets posted, a poll goes up, that sort of thing, and invariably there is debate, because that's what the page is for. So Rocky, tell us a little bit about your role in founding that page with Sandy, and what your goals were. Did it meet your goals? Has it evolved?
So the page was actually born out of necessity, because Sandy, being a moderator on Neighbors and Friends, I was noticing that a lot of these, they spend a great deal of their time, and you guys don't know this, but behind the scenes, they do a lot of work. Like, my hat goes off to all of them for what they do. It's truly amazing, but they were spending a great deal of their time dealing with people who want to talk politics. Obviously, West Hartford, I believe we had the second highest voter turnout of any town in Connecticut, right behind Greenwich. We're a town that is very political. People like to post these kinds of things, and their outlet wanted to be Neighbors and Friends, but they have a stipulation on Neighbors and Friends that you're not supposed to talk politics. And so finally, I just said to Sandy, it wasn't really an attempt to start a political forum for the purpose of everybody immediately going and having these raging debates. It was more, we need to not just, when they tell somebody you can't talk politics, you really need to be able to say, don't talk politics, but you can talk politics. So here's this great place that you can go to discuss these things. And really, I didn't know when we started it if it was going to take off. It was going to be 10 people. But pretty quickly, I learned that people really do want to talk politics. And it was not very easy in the beginning stages, because once you get a flood of the initial people that want to discuss political things, as you can imagine, a lot of times they don't do it in a very nice way. And that's probably one of the reasons that Patti doesn't want that stuff on the Neighbors and Friends page, because it can get out of control. And people are very passionate about their political views. And I understand that. And the only thing that we've ever asked is that be nice. You're allowed to be passionate. You're allowed to have your views. We want you to have your views, but you're not allowed to attack people. And so that's kind of where we've gone with it. And, the rest just kind of evolved over the years.
It also started as initially, not national, but local, so that, people could talk about candidates running for town council. And the way the political climate went, after 2016, we found a lot of people posting, more national things, and we started to allow, things out. Initially it was West Hartford and Connecticut, and then people want to talk about this stuff. And again, it's not something that should be on Neighbors and Friends, because we won't stay neighbors or friends if we talk about some of these things. So we did open it up to more of a national discussion, and I think a lot of people needed that, especially once COVID hit. Like, COVID became so political.
Right.
Yeah, COVID does not happen in a vacuum. It's not a town issue. It's not a state issue. It's not even a country issue. It's really a world issue. And so we could either, and obviously you don't think of something like a pandemic as being a political thing, but it very quickly became a political thing. And so we kind of said, as much as we would like for this to not be a national news type page, if you're going to cover COVID, and you have to, you've got to cover national and really even world news. Yeah. So that's been going on to a greater degree for the last year. I'd like to get away from that as we get away from COVID.
And it is surprising how quickly things do become political. I mean, without getting political, I mean, all over the news today is talk of a senator from Texas who had, I guess, had a scheduled vacation with his family, and he's getting hammered. I admit I beat him up a little bit on my page, and came back because of the political pressure, and that immediately went political. Even the electricity shortage in Texas, there's been a little bit of a politicization, and to me it's a little bit of a shame. I wish we could stay away from politicizing and just start to look at the facts. What caused the power grid outage? How do we resolve it as a bipartisan effort? But that's what. These are the types of topics I enjoy seeing on the page when it stays respectful. Yesterday, Rocky, you posted about the death of Rush Limbaugh. It turned into arguments, which is kind of disappointing. I haven't listened to Rush in years, but I enjoyed listening to him in the 1990s. I've always been amazed and fascinated by, I don't know if you remember the Contract with America, the whole Newt Gingrich. Does anybody remember that? And I just thought, it was such an interesting approach that they took in 94 to retake the House, retake the Senate. And, it's disappointing to see it, fall into kind of an ugly argument versus a debate of the actual issues. Wasn't really a question, but just an observation.
But again, that's kind of the tough line that you draw. When you're trying to run a political page, you want people to be able to give their opinions on things like this. I don't necessarily agree with someone, especially if they want to talk ill of the dead in any capacity for the most part, but I want people to feel free to give their opinions as long as they're not attacking other members of the group. I would say with ease, 75% of the stuff that's put up there, I would love to take down because I don't like what people are saying in a lot of cases, but this page is not there for me to or Sandy to give our political stance and then, kind of tell everybody that unless you fall in line with what we believe, I want to see what everybody's got to say. I just want them to do it in a way that's a little more conciliatory. And yeah, that one kind of went off the rails.
The problem is when you say you don't, like, we try to keep it middle ground and, hey, there's two sides here. People don't always see that. If you don't agree with them, regardless of what side you're on or where you are, people want to say like, oh, well, you didn't agree with this opinion, so you don't agree with me and you're on the right, or you didn't agree with this, so you must be on the left. And that's something we really have tried to rein in on the page. Like, hey, we can have conversations and you can have an opinion here and someone can have an opinion here and someone can be in the middle. Just because they don't agree with you doesn't mean you can't have a healthy discussion,
I think that
how many? Yeah. I was going to say, like, how many of the posts do you think have to be taken down? What do you know, like percentage-wise?
Not nearly as many as there used to be. It used to be like probably half of them we had to take down.
We've had to, just like neighbors and friends. There are people who don't want to follow rules, and it's not that there's a ton of rules on the page. I mean, one of my favorite ones that we created was know when to scroll. Like, a healthy debate is great, but if you're selling your opinion and someone else is selling theirs and you're not changing their mind, they're not changing yours, and you're not willing to see their point of view, stop typing. Like, you're not getting anywhere. And it's the same thing on neighbors and friends. Like, we don't need to, everything doesn't need to be an argument, and you need to know when to walk away from something that's not productive.
But at the same time, I've seen a whole lot of people have discussions that were good discussions about politics.
I think we've weeded out, the people that say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to, just stir things up. Then if you don't follow the rules, you get removed. And there's other pages you can go and talk politics that are one-sided, and that's fine. But right. We don't have to remove as much.
There were a couple of pages that just started recently that originally were public and now they've gone private. I think it's called West Hartford Uncensored, is it? Ronnie, help me out because you saw these pages. I'm trying to remember the names.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I kind of even forgot they existed. I don't even know if they're still operating. But yeah, they were similar. Like, one was Uncensored West Hartford, the other was West Hartford Uncensored, something like that, where they wanted people to be able to basically attack each other and not have those posts taken down. Not really very friendly. I'm not sure who was administering them. I did see them briefly when they were out there, but that creates another kind of a.
I thought the fact that they were called uncensored and then they went private about day 3 was, I'm not criticizing, but I just thought that was an interesting paradox. So question for Patti and Rocky and Sandy. I would think, full disclosure, I am a moderator on the political forum. So I've gone through this process a little bit with Rocky and Sandy a few times, but I would think for all of you, one of the hardest decisions you have to make on an occasional basis is removing a member. Is that an easy process? Is it hard? Is it both, depending on the infraction? Talk a little bit about that.
I think it's funny because, I have to debate with both of them. Sometimes Patti and I have a discussion, right? And it's,
yep.
Should they be kicked off or are they towing the line? And
we kind of, at least for the neighbors and friends, we talk among the 4 of us about what it is, and I tend to kind of let it slide a little bit more. People get worked up. They're passionate about how they feel, whatever the topic is. Sometimes it's very clear cut of, who can't be on the page anymore. And, it's unfortunate, but we can't allow any of our members to be, called names that no one should hear at all, and especially written out for 20,000 people to see. But we do have going all the time among the 4 of us of various things, whether it be that a person, is this okay? Did you see this post? Or is this post okay to approve? Should we keep it up? Should we close comments? So the 4 of us, we generally talk about anything that is questionable so that we're all, even if we don't 100% agree with each other, we all know the reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
It can be tough when you have four people weighing in on an issue. I could see that being a challenge at times. Yeah, especially if it's you 2 tied.
It's terrible. I don't think there's been very many times we've totally disagreed. I think it's more validation that you seeing this the same way I'm seeing this.
Right. So another issue that happens on this page, and you got to forgive me because I don't know, I'm sure Facebook has a technical term for it, and I don't know what that term is. But when somebody, and this happens on political forum all the time, maybe it doesn't happen on Neighbors and Friends now with moderator approval, but when they just kind of do what I call a drop and run or a bump and run, something highly controversial, usually it's a repost, usually there's no creativity or no thought or no involvement of the poster. That's Rocky. What is that? Am I right? Is it called a bump and run or a drop and run? What's that called when somebody does that? Do you know what I'm referring to?
I think it's called a post and run. I don't think there's an actual term for it.
There might be.
We kind of just came up with it. Just don't post and run.
Yeah, if you're going to post, have a discussion about it. Don't just dump something controversial and run away, no matter what page you're on.
Right, and that's I think one of the most difficult things that has happened on both pages, but maybe happens more on political forum. So
when I share things, I always try to introduce them, and that's actually sometimes, like for me as a news person, that can almost be as difficult as writing the story, like making sure that when I share it to either one of the pages, and I will tend to use the same introduction when I share it to different groups, but making sure it provides the context. And I think what you're talking about, John, is people will share things with no context at all. They'll just put it up there and run away.
What he's talking about is not, and I would say that I probably fall under the same blanket. I share a lot of things where I just post it up there, and it's just my attempt to
break your own rule.
Kind of keep things exactly. I'm not just dropping something there that I think is overly controversial that I pulled off of some crazy link on the Drudge Report just to get people riled up. I think that's more of what you're talking about. But if Ronnie throws something up, a recent thing that she's written, certainly you don't have to always opine as to what it's about or put the appropriate header. In fact, one of the things that I struggle with is that I don't want to come across as partisan. And I think a lot of times, just even in the way that you that you put a header on some of the articles that you can put up there, or even make a slight comment to kind of get the conversation going, people immediately think that I'm trying to take up for one side or the other, and that's never something that I want to do. I don't think that it would be a very effective page if I was just completely partisan and did that all the time, but it's very difficult to kind of just present it as, here's what's going on one side, here's what's going on the other side, and discuss. People always want to say, well, what do you think about this? Or why did you say that? And it's like, I said that because this is what someone said. This is not what I'm saying necessarily. I don't want my opinion. It's from the page.
I've run into it, Rocky, where there was one of our counselors wrote an op-ed probably 2-3 weeks ago, and very strong opinion on a very sensitive and hot button issue. And somebody called me and said, will you put a poll up? And I said, my personal page, I try to take a nonpartisan role on these pages, especially as a moderator. But I do. I'm concurring with you, Rocky, where I kind of feel your pain. Where it's like sometimes you're in a position where you want to say something, want to do something, even if it's just to be helpful, but it suddenly throws you into an appearance of a partisan position, and it's a tough page. So it's a tough page where you've got very strong opinions. When I'll tell the story, when I was asked by a whole dust-up happened with Representative Jillian Gilchrist, and the result was I was asked to be a moderator on the political forum page, and I thought it was this right wing, and not that anything's wrong with that, like I said, but it's just I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know you. I didn't know either of you, Rocky or Sandy, and I remember being very nervous stepping in. But in the end, it was all about communication and understanding different perspectives and listening. Probably more than working, even though I'm talking ad nauseum right now. But, anyway, so Patti, I want to come back to you. You because of the size of your page, you have support and involvement from Facebook corporate, right? You have representatives or people you deal with at Facebook.
I'm part of a Facebook. I can't remember what it's called. It's a power admin or something that I was asked to join probably about a year ago. I think probably because of the size of the page and the involvement that we have. So I don't tend to post too much or ask questions there, but I do get I see what's coming up that's new for groups and things like that, and that when we have new capabilities. So I kind of know to be on the lookout for them, and I'll send a screenshot to the other admins and say, look at this is coming out and we have it now. Ways to track growth, ways to track engagement. We have the ability to have topics that we can tag posts in, so people can click on the topic and it will bring up any post that has that tagged in it. So as things become new, I see them, and it's just nice to have that support. And there's been a few times I've posed a question to them and they've been able to answer me right away. A few times when Facebook has had major glitches and I'm like, is it just me or is it everybody? So it is kind of nice to have that ability to be a part of that and see what's coming up within Facebook and kind of see the behind the scenes stuff.
I think for a page of 20,000 people, that kind of support is great.
Yes.
Now if you could just figure out how to monetize it, you could retire.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Isn't offering that, are they?
I don't think I want that responsibility. At least this way, it's easy. But it's not about any of that. It's about connecting the neighbors to people who live on their street, in their school district, within the town, within a surrounding town. It really is more just for information. It's not meant to be anything more than that.
How many times do you think, or how many times a day do you kind of step into a conversation, either to provide just a little bit more information or to, maybe provide caution about the direction that a conversation is taking?
Less now, for a little while when we didn't really have a whole ton of guidelines and kind of whatever we did, I felt like, that mom or the principal stepping in and saying, now, be nice. But people will tag me, people will message me to kind of say, hey, heads up, just watch. And I've also gotten to the point where I can sense kind of when a topic may turn south, even though it seems innocent enough. I've been able to figure out some of those key triggers, and I can turn on notifications so that I'm aware that, just what the comments are and things like that. So, I check in on and off. Now with 4 of us, I don't have to do it as much. And I admit there are times where I go hours and hours without. And then there's times in the middle of vacation, my kids are like, put it away. So it just, I try not to overstep, but I do every once in a while make that comment that lets people know that I'm paying attention to it. And to please remember to be nice, that we all have different opinions, and your opinion isn't wrong and neither is the other person's. And just because you don't see it the same way doesn't mean it needs to be taken down. It's kind of with a political page. We have to grow, and seeing both sides, you may not change an opinion this time around, but maybe next time it'll make you think a little bit differently.
Now this is really, I'm really excited because we got a question in, and I'm really happy it came in while you were talking, because it kicked off a thought process in my mind. And I alluded to it with Ronnie before, but I don't want to delve into it because Ronnie and I are not the subject of this interview. So Anthony Claffey, who I think we all know that name, just sent a note just saying what a great resource you've been. Another name I think of, and these are 2 businesses, and I'll talk about what they do, is Jason Clotterbuck. So I learned about Jason Clotterbuck probably in 2013 when I needed a lawnmower repaired. He was advertising to repair lawnmowers, things like that.
Jason does lawnmowers?
I think we're on site. But my tractor or something. I don't remember what it was. But Jason literally started his business, as I understand it. And I check in with him once in a while. I talked to him within the last month and a half. He has a 2.5-year backlog on major construction projects. And the guy has never advertised anywhere. He's only been referred through neighbors and friends. Anthony Claffey, who made the comment here, he started a car service that we've used. I know a lot of people have used, where he'll take you to the airport. He charges really reasonable rates. But same thing, he grew his entire business playing by the rules by talking about it and getting talked about on Neighbors and Friends. Right. I mean, Patti, talk about that, and Ronnie too, really, weehaw.com. Am I out of line, Ronnie, if I say weehaw is maybe not what it is today without Neighbors and Friends?
No, that's not out of line at all. I mean, I am very, very thankful for the existence, or I'm very thankful for a lot of things about Neighbors and Friends, but I'm very thankful for the extra engagement in the community that it provides me, because it does extend our reach. I mean, our page right now has almost 11,000 followers on its own. So that's a large number of people. But I'm sure a lot of them overlap, maybe not all of them. But it really helps me reach a very engaged audience in the community to share information. Like I will have one coming out that if you see my eyes darting off, there was a fire this afternoon, like right before this show, and I've been trying to get a story out on that. And probably I know people have been texting me, including my own daughter, saying, what happened? I saw these fire trucks. So to be able to get information out that, I hope everybody trusts that when I write it, it's accurate, and to be able to share it with that wider audience, to me, is so valuable. And it's helped me, expand the visibility of weehaw.com.
So Patti, talk a little bit about, I'm sure you know Anthony, I'm sure you know Jason, and I'm sure there are others, and forgive me for forgetting them, but talk a little bit about that, to kind of to Ronnie's point, because you've seriously changed some lives here.
Well, one of the things we wanted to do was give the local businesses and the small storefronts, a voice, but also not to become the business page. So we have a slightly stricter policy than some of the other, towns. We do once every 3 months. You're allowed to self-promote, but you're free to comment on any post that, say, John, you're looking for a plumber. the plumber can comment under there. The only thing that we've kind of changed, I think within the last year or so, Sandy, is that we ask them to please disclose that they are an owner, an employee, a spouse, etc. of that business. Because when somebody's looking for a recommendation, I feel very strongly that a recommendation is just that. It's not a plug for a business. So we do, and not that I don't want them to respond, but I want them to say, oh, I am able to help you, or give me a call at, so that the homeowner or the person, commenting or posting, knows it is the business themselves that they be contacting, where, it might come differently if it's, Ronnie saying, oh, I've had great luck with so-and-so. I think it's weighed a little bit differently at that point. But we do want to give these, people a chance to promote themselves. When this all went down, within probably about 24 hours, I had a post up saying, if you are a local restaurant that is doing curbside delivery, pickup, whatever, post the information here. Right away we went, because I know those small businesses are hurting, and I try to find ways. I think there's currently pinned at the top of the page for snow shoveling, to get those people to have the ability to be able to post their services without waiting every 3 months. Around Christmas time, probably the end of October, November, if you have a small business, are you an Etsy owner? Do you do Tupperware? Do you have a storefront? Are you running Christmas or holiday specials? I'm trying to give them the opportunity to do that and to have it be West Hartford specific. You can be from another town and be part of the page, and that's fine. But in the end, I am all about West Hartford, and trying to make, the businesses stand out, the restaurants, the storefronts, the mom and pops, the little businesses that right now desperately need our help. I'm trying everything I can to make sure that information is out there. Super Bowl Sunday, we did a post about, do you have any specials, and things like that. Anything to help keep West Hartford going. If
you provide phenomenal service, which both Anthony and Jason do, I speak from experience, you don't even need to promote your business. People are going to do it for you. When somebody yesterday posted leak in the ceiling, need a plumber, immediately the same names every time pop up, because they're the people that provide really, really reliable service. So, Patti, Ronnie, before I get into the future, do you have any more questions pertaining to the present? I don't want to jump ahead of you.
No.
Okay.
That's
all right.
I could ask questions all day long. But...
Well, we have another 11 minutes, Ronnie. So you're good if you'd like to, but otherwise, I want to talk about the future, because Patti, especially in your case, Facebook's new. The longest anybody's had it now is probably 17 years, and that's if you went to Harvard or a handful of other colleges. Mm-hmm. What does the future hold for you? Terms of your involvement with the page, does the page live on even if you choose to step back? Like what happens?
You know what? Once again, if I had that crystal ball, that would be awesome. I don't know. We're just going to keep kind of doing it as it is, and it may come to some point that it's not needed for information, because everybody has found all the different ways to access the same information that I find a lot of the times. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. It'll just keep going, and until, there's not a need for it. I don't see myself leaving West Hartford ever, so that's not going to be an issue. Hopefully Sandy and Carol and Kara stay with me, just to kind of give that, different perspective and making sure we're hitting everything. But I don't know what's going to happen. We'll have to see what Facebook does. Some of it obviously will depend on how Facebook keeps going.
It's interesting to think about as legacy becomes an issue, as Facebook ages and continues to be this kind of critical hub of communications, what's going to happen, because, time marches on. There's no there's no stopping it. So, Rocky, any I'll start with you guys. Any parting thoughts aside from a plug to join the West Hartford Political Forum? Any thoughts, Rocky and Sandy?
Only if you're nice. Be nice. If you join the page, be nice.
No, I hearing you talk and honestly, to talk after Patti, I feel like she's the dean of the college and I'm like a third-year grad student teaching a class on Thursday nights in sociology or something. But yeah, it's what's been amazing to see for me is the role that social media has played over the last 11 months as we've all been kind of driven out of the house and down into our basements to be on a computer all the time, especially in the early days of COVID. The role that social media took was all of a sudden the most important role for a lot of people because you weren't able to get out and talk to people and communicate that way. So it became even more important than it was before. And it was really important before. I mean, in terms of being able to find someone, for example, if you were to the day after Christmas be hanging some blinds and lower your foot into your sink and drop it into the floor.
Thanks, Patti.
And you need someone to remount the sink and fix your plumbing for you on December 26th. I don't know what someone would do in a situation like that without neighbors and friends because there's just not a lot of places to go. So, I mean, that one's been a godsend for us too. Yeah.
It's bailed us out. RAC failed years ago, and trying to remember the guy's name, big Italian guy, and he was like all the rage for a year or two, and then he retired out of the business. But he bailed us out, and I wish I could remember his name. But I'm gonna say Paul.
So I need to go and search. Speaking of AC, I really one of these days need to put like my house has no air conditioning. We have units, and now that my husband's working at home too, and he hates the sound of the really loud, huge unit in our family room that he's been using as our office, I'd like to have somebody come over and look at putting in a split system. We don't have ductwork. So if anybody hears this and can help us out, I need to do it in the winter so it'll be ready for when it gets hot. So, I mean, I use it for stuff like that all the time. We've had somebody... The window guy has come over and looked at our casement window, and somebody else has helped us with drainage. So it's been, such a great resource for things like that in town.
I think there's something else that people, we're talking about businesses and resources. Another thing I don't know that Patti really grasps is some of the friendships that have been formed on that page with spin-off pages, with I was able to find a divorce, a community of women who are also divorced like me with kids. And I learned a lot through them. And I made people that I consider lifelong friends now. And, we started our wine page off of that. And same thing, we've met friends. So, these little offshoots from your page, Patti, form, like real lifelong friendships. And that's as important as a business being successful too, especially right now.
Well, look at Ronnie and me. This show doesn't happen, and we've done a lot together, and it's because of WeHa. I mean, Ronnie, I think that's ultimately how I met you, right?
So we met when you were helping organize the Sandy Hook Vigil.
Okay, that's right.
And,
okay,
and I worked at Patch back then,
that's right.
But back when Patch was a little different from what it is now. Not to make disparaging remarks.
When
or
Patch
anything,
was something, Ronnie, is that what you're going to say?
No. When it was
when Patch was a thing.
No, when it was truly hyper local, like of the community by the community, and
yep.
Back when I was hired, we had to live either in the town or within 8 miles of the town, and that was, you were told you had to have kind of a coffee shop presence in town, and that company is under different ownership now and has evolved a lot. So it is accurate to say it's different, but so I met you and we started working on some things together just to kind of spread information about what was happening in West Hartford and to use our various platforms. And now I'd like to say you're our weather guy now. I saw you went live this morning. I didn't even know you were doing that.
I didn't know I was doing it either. But it just, when I woke up, I knew we were going to get some snow early. We did, but we didn't get quite as much. So I just did a quick update to show. I don't want people to lull people into, being too complacent, because I knew the roads were going to be dicey this afternoon, as Rocky, I think, can attest, even coming from Detroit. You came from Boston. I was coming from the East.
Yeah.
But
the important thing is that you actually listen to John, unlike me, who decided to take upon a trip to and from Boston today.
although
I haven't taken my car out in days because my road is under construction.
And Rocky, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you've aged considerably from your publicity picture that you gave.
Yes, the backstory here is that I contacted the HR department. I needed a headshot for that, and the one that's on my ID badge that I don't have it on anymore. It's probably
15 years.
We met on Match.com 9 years ago. I believe that picture was on one of my profile pics.
Yeah,
so it's at least 9 years old. I'm going to say probably north of 13.
In that case, if he was on Match, the picture's actually 25 years old. So that's the way.
And photoshopped, right?
So anyway, hey, great show. Sandy and Rocky, thank you so much for coming on. Patti, this is our second time, our very first show, Ronnie, which we're going to be celebrating the anniversary in the next couple of weeks. Patti was on, and now this show. So Patti, thank you for coming back on and telling us a little bit about what you experienced, because I think it's a fascinating topic. And as Ronnie said before, we could go on all night long. I mean, I'm just, I think of so many stories and funny posts and moments and relationships, as Yelena Pasternak posted here in the comments, that the relationships and the friendships that are built. Because Patti, I knew you. We were both Whitingland parents, but I didn't know you well until you really got rolling on this page. And I for one am grateful that it exists. I think it's great for the community, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
And hey, coming your way in a little while will be a story about a fire. So
prove it.
That is
Ronnie putting her money where her mouth is. She's going to multitask, does an interview and delivers on a fire story.
I actually did interview somebody at the scene. I've got to look up those notes that I was trying to type with my kind of frozen fingers. So.
All right, gang. Well, hey, thank you all very much. For Ronnie Newton, I'm John Lyons, weha.com, and we will see you. We got a couple of great guests coming up. We just don't have dates yet, so we got to get the dates squared away, but we'll see you here in the next couple of weeks.
All right.
Thanks
so much. And
weather forecast. So